National Signing Day on Rivals.com coming to a close. Finally, it's been a long day for us. You can see it written all over our faces, some more than others. But let's talk about some of the big issues, big talking points as we close things out on this Signing Day 2016. Starting with Texas, let's pat Rob on the back. He came out and said that he thought Charlie Strong was, telling kids to reserve their announcements on their commitments for some time. It later came out that was pretty much the case, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a brilliant move if you think about it. You're struggling on the field. You're in dire need of good press. So you have all these commitments from, relatively big-time guys. You hold them all off for signing day when everybody's watching. You put it out there, and already I've seen a headline. I've seen Dan Wolken, our own Dan Wolken at Yahoo Sports, not our own Dan Wetzel, excuse me. Oh, man, that was a bad mistake. Dan Wetzel of Yahoo Sports write a story about how Texas is making progress and stepping in the right direction. And that's exactly what Charlie Strong wanted when he orchestrated this whole ordeal, and it's worked out for him.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. It's called PR. It's a strategy.
Absolutely. Nobody's besmirching him for this.
The one problem I had was him saying, what was his excuse, that he didn't want other people recruiting the players?
Yeah, that's BS.
Well, they're all 4-stars and 5-stars who are uncommitted. Why wouldn't they still be getting recruited?
It's not as though Charlie Strong found him under a rock.
Right. That logic doesn't hold up. But the strategy was smart. I mean, we're talking about him, like you said, the Dan Wetzel, very accomplished award-winning writer, is writing about them, and that's exactly what they wanted.
Is that a little bit of a gamble by our boy Charlie there?
No, I don't think so, because, even if he had them, what does a commitment really mean? Let's say that he had them announce their commitments when they committed. They wouldn't be any safer than they would be silently committed.
But maybe some more teams back off of the said kids, like we were talking about.
Sure, I guess that's a possibility.
But then they end up announcing final decisions, and we know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then I judge them.
Really grinds his gears.
Well, then might lead him to fire some shots, which is our next topic of the day, which was something we all get excited about when people take jabs at each other.
I love it.
Indirectly, or in some other people's cases, more directly. But the first shot of the day comes from Arkansas's own Brent Bielema.
Yeah, he goes on ESPN2, and some people are saying maybe it wasn't a shot, but the way he said it leaves some room at least to interpretation.
Listen, take it from me, a master subtweeter / troller / commentator. That was a perfect shot right across the bow, right at Florida, because they lost Tyree Cleveland. Our own Jason Howell said, hey, Tyree Cleveland is going to end up there. Instead, he ends up at Florida, and I think that got under Bert's skin a little bit.
Yeah, and what was the quote exactly? You ran it back. It was, Florida is the new Ole Miss in the way that they do things that shock you on the recruiting trail.
And whatever. I don't know what he's insinuating. I guess he's insinuating that maybe they use some improper tactics or something like that. Guess what?
Maybe he's just talking about climbing trees and having sleepovers.
Hey, all's fair in love, war, and recruiting. So, the bottom line is the Gators got his signature today. That's what matters the most. We had a couple other guys, though. It started last night. We had North Carolina. Their offensive coordinator takes to Twitter to sort of insinuate, hey, we're getting Nate Craig Myers, and guess what, Auburn, you're missing out, right?
It's amazing. The funniest part about that wasn't that he was completely wrong and that people are retweeting it now and rubbing it in his face. It was that he used the palm tree emoji to represent a person.
Right.
We had a great conversation about palm tree. It's like, oh, man.
Well, we all know that there's more palm trees in South Florida than in the Tampa area. But so then our boy Damian Craig comes back at him today, says, gives him a little ribbing back, which I enjoyed. And then they sort of hashed it out because they are grown men and not children. So they agreed to disagree on that one. But then, of course, we had James Franklin. One more shot at Jim Harbaugh saying, we're going to be creative but not creepy.
It comes off a little bit bitter to me. Do say what you want about James Franklin. Is it creepy if the recruits are committing to him? Is it? What's working? Who's it creeping out? I'll tell you who's creeping out. People that aren't recruiting as well.
We just talk. What's kind of along those lines, and we just talk a little bit about the lengths that some of these guys are willing to put themselves out in the public eye, doing things that seem like, is this really like a recruiting tactic? It seems like the recruits are just playing Simon Says with these coaches, seeing how far
absolutely. They can. I've always said that if I was a top flight recruit, I would sign a letter of intent and hide it somewhere and be like, all right, this is a scavenger hunt.
Maybe a video will get made about that later.
The only antic. The only antic that I'm tired of, and I think we're all tired of, is dabbing. Please, let it die. We had a couple 4-stars in here tonight, and I told them, let it go, boys. If I think it's washed, guess what? I'm an old man. It's over. And the one last shot we had, Jeff Scott going at maybe Michigan a little bit.
I missed this one.
Oh, you missed Jeff Scott, the offensive coordinator at Clemson, friend of the show, I would consider him.
Sure.
He ends up tweeting a picture of John Simpson committing and smiling and saying,
Oh, yeah.
I love when our commits are smiling because they know they made the right decision. Maybe insinuating a little bit that Rashawn Gary was having second thoughts as we saw his, blasé reaction.
I just think that's how Rashawn Gary is.
There was a delay in the letter, maybe getting the
Yeah,
fax
you know,
there.
some sources
But who
say-
knows with fax machines these days?
Fax
yeah,
machines
right?
are fax
They just
machines,
don't build them like they used to.
fax machines are trending down. But it was a fun day of shots fired, and guess what? Guess who wasn't involved? This guy.
Oh,
I kept
man.
my
Outlawed.
History being made.
I kept my mouth shut all day long.
Well, a lot of talk about some SEC schools in the mix with all that conversation. Let's talk about maybe some of the positives with another SEC school. Tennessee, closing strong, doing well on the day, getting commitments from Tyler Bird, Nigel Warrior, and your favorite JUCO player of all time, as it seems, maybe.
Yeah, I just kind of like that he told everybody he was coming. That's a move that I would definitely pull if I was a recruiter.
Sure.
Is his nickname King Kongbo already? And if not, I'd like to trademark that.
Yeah, no, I saw
Get the
somebody.
t-shirts
I
printed.
saw somebody call him King Kong on the internet.
No,
I've
no.
not seen King Kong.
King Kongbo. His
No,
last
it-
name is Kongbo.
it
King
makes more
Kongbo.
sense.
Butch Jones does it again. I had predicted leading up to signing day that they get Derek Brown. It turns out, swapping another a
Sure.
four-star and Tyler Bird, who you don't just take kids from the state of Miami, but go down to Naples High, where Nick Kruger made his bones as a high school athlete.
Your boy in the Mr. Rogers sweater correctly predicted about 72 hours ago that Tyler Bird would end up in this class at Tennessee. It was all the Larry Scott factor, I think, and man, it really played out for them. That was a huge get for them, especially after the All-Star season that Tyler Bird had. I think that Tennessee fans will be really happy with him.
Now, one to watch too, Nigel Warrior, cousins with D'Angelo Gibbs, a Rivals 100 guy in the class of 2017. So one recruiting
Just saying
victory.
is that Tennessee is trending.
They are Tennessee. You're trending in the right direction with some of these young kids.
And another SEC school on the minds of everybody today, Kirby Smart and his debut at UGA, the performance that he turned in. I think what would we grade him out as? A B plus maybe? I mean, really just missing out on Derek Brown. By
Yeah,
estimation?
and EJ Price. So I think
E.J. Price.
the thing we have to remember is he was coaching at Alabama until when? January
Yeah.
11th. I mean, that was just
He won a national championship.
Right. He won the Natty. So that was just a few weeks ago. So he had some time to make up. I think if he could do it all over again, when he got the job, he would have made Derek Brown a bigger priority. I think that was the miss there. EJ Price, they
He still
want.
got Carter though, right?
Right. He got Mikael Carter, who I think, maybe not quite the high ceiling that Derek Brown has, but in terms of production and what he brings right now, I think, it's right there.
I think that he definitely showed. I mean, there's no reason for anybody to be discouraged anywhere near that fan base about what he can do down the road. I'm interested in how he tries to attack Florida. He hadn't really had the time to get in there when he got that job. I wonder how heavily he'll go in and recruit that state going forward.
Yeah, we saw him get involved there in the past. I think he gets some Florida guys. In 2017, though, I talked to a lot of these kids. One of them, Jaden Hunter, who committed with us, already on board. A lot of four-stars in the state have connections to Kirby Smart, and I think that full year means
Absolutely.
next year.
That's kind of what I wondered.
Yeah, next year, top 5.
So former Alabama defensive coordinator, now head coach, Kirby Smart. Staying with the Alabama theme, let's talk about them winning another recruiting title. We've talked about all kinds of numbers. 7 of their last 9 years, they've won a recruiting title here. This is just the latest. They had a great day today. What would you say about their performance?
There's a reason that they're the national champions, and there's a reason that they've been the national champions, several times in the last decade. They recruit well. I mean, they've got a good recruiting staff. Saban has the mystique now. Everybody wants to play there. It's weird how recruiting works. It tends to snowball on itself. You get one class, you get some wins, you get a couple national championship wins, and then it snowballs, and it's really hard to dethrone them. And I think we've seen that over the last 5-6 years.
We take some flack sometimes from fans of other fan bases saying, look, how are all these good players from the state of Alabama, Ben Davis, Lindell Wilson, 2 5-stars who committed today from inside the state. But guess what? You're pulling Terrell Hall from out of the Mid-Atlantic region, where we know is very talented, a lot of good players up there. Then they go into Texas and they get Jared Maiden, who's a 4-star. So I mean, it's Texas, it's the Mid-Atlantic, it's California. They're just getting whoever they want. They're really raiding the country, and that's why they're number 1.
Absolutely, and you see them go next door into Mississippi, and even take kids in a great year in Mississippi and go over there and do what they did there.
So So good grades for us for Alabama as my voice gets a little froggy. One guy's voice who is never froggy is our National Recruiting Director, Mike Farrell. He's got plenty to say, and he leads the conversation with our trip into his own mind of Mike with the discussion of Alabama's most recent recruiting title.
The Alabama Crimson Tide win the recruiting title for Rivals.com again, 7th time in 9 years, picking up nearly double-digit commitments on signing day. We all knew they would close strong. We all knew they would get a few 5-stars, and we all knew that they would get the linebacker duo in state of Ben Davis and Mack Wilson. What these two bring to the table are completely different things. You've got Ben Davis, who I think is that inside guy, that big backer that Alabama loves to have roam the middle, come up and thump. And Mack Wilson's he's a space eater. He can do a lot of things outside. He can run plays down. He can funnel things to the inside, back to Ben Davis. So I think you're going to see a pretty dynamic 1-2 punch from these guys down the stretch. And again, 5 stars in state are more important than 5 stars out of state. They had to keep these guys for a while. Wilson was saying Florida was his leader. I thought that was sort of a smokescreen. Ben Davis liked Georgia, Kirby Smart. But really, in the end, what it comes down to is Alabama continues to churn out first-rounders. They've won 4 out of the last 7 national championships. They have the biggest brand in college football, and they can sell everything about it. National championships, NFL draft, millions of dollars at the next level, great coaching. You're always going to be in contention, so it's really hard to beat them. Florida State gave it a run, but Alabama finishing number 1. Now, some surprises on the day. Now, usually there's some stunners, and I don't think there was anything really stunning, but Jeffrey Simmons, the 5-star defensive end in Mississippi, I had going to Alabama in a tight battle against Ole Miss, and then he commits to Mississippi State, and Mississippi State usually gets a big-time 5-star down the stretch every year, so I should learn my lesson. I haven't yet, clearly, but that was a great pull for Dan Mullen. E.J. Price, the offensive tackle from Georgia. A lot of people expected him to go to Georgia, where he was previously committed, or possibly go to Auburn. But USC, he's headed out to the West Coast. USC finished with a lot of Southeast prospects on the day. Not what they want to rely upon, but it's good to see them get into the Southeast because that's going to help them on the national recruiting front, and that's what Pete Carroll used to do. And then Trayvon Mullen, I thought was going to LSU. He was a Florida State lean for the longest time, then an LSU lean, chose Clemson, tremendous choice. Obviously, Mackenzie Alexander coming from Florida, doing a great job there. So great job by Clemson pulling him away from the Tigers.
Well, thanks again for joining us all day long on Rivals.com. Before we give our final send-off, let's give a big thank you to the real MVP, Dave Barry, West Coast video producer, manning the cameras and the live switching all day long. So, guys, unless there's, without any further ado, maybe we should just close out the National Signing Day. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Oh!